G'day humans, Stead from Finder here, and today I'm reviewing the Sony ZV-E10 camera. Now this is a vlogger camera. It's designed specifically for people who want to create content, video content, 4K content. However, to do so with the benefits of an interchangeable mirrorless lens setup. Now you can stream directly from this thing to your PC, you can take stills, and you can shoot on the go. So I'm going to take this thing through its paces and get back to you with my thoughts in a second.
Alright, so here is the Sony ZV-E10 in all of its glory. Now it comes as just a body for around the $1,200 mark here in Australia, or for $1,400 you can get the kit lens with it as well, which is pretty good. I think the kit lens is worth the extra expense. The shooting grip, which I'll go into in more detail in its own unique review, costs around an extra additional $200. You can get it a bit cheap if you look around, but to get the full kit, you are looking at pushing up towards that $1,600 mark here in Australia. Now, where does this fit into the entire kind of, I guess, spectrum of the Sony cameras and indeed the landscape in general? Is it's a follow-up to the ZV-1 camera, but I'm not sure whether it's kind of like an iteration or an evolution or just really an expansion of the range. So what it effectively does is it takes the design philosophies of the ZV-1 camera and then adds in the sensor from the A6000 series with the APS-C sensor. And then you also have then the Interchangeable Lens edition, which is kind of, I guess, the big point of difference here between this and the ZV-1. Now, in adding the APS-C sensor to this camera, and it's an older sensor, which I'll bring up a bit later on, but so you're not getting a brand new sensor. It is a bit dated, and when you're taking your stills, you can kind of notice that, we do know that there's better sensors out there and that you can get, but they're still pretty good in my opinion. But what you do get with that new sensor, it's a bigger sensor, so you're getting better low light, you're getting a better, shallower depth of field, more dynamic range, and that kind of stuff that you get. What you lose is some of that that continuous shooting frame rate. So this drops from about the 24 frames a second that you get on the ZV-1 to about 11 frames a second. And so you lose those higher frame rate shooting modes when you switch to this this camera from the ZV-1. But the ZV-1 only has 20 megapixels. This does have 24 megapixels, so you've got a bit of an improvement there with a bigger sensor as well. So you do gain some benefits, but you also do lose a few bits and pieces. Notably, you also lose the ND filter on this, which was available in the ZV-1. So that is a bit of a loss actually. But I'll talk about the lack of filters a bit more later. I'm not going to go through all the features that this camera has on this video. You can jump on the find.com.au website to read my full review, which does list all the features, but a couple of highlights. As mentioned, 24 megapixel sensor in this puppy. You can shoot 4K at 25 frames per second without it being cropped, which is a big step up, or it's a good step up from the ZV-1 and also additional cameras that we're seeing in the market, such as the Canon M50. But you do get a bit of cropping if you go to 30 frames a second. You also see cropping if you have the 120 frames per second at 1080p setting on, and also when you've got the active image stabilization mode set, which I will show you some footage of what that looks like, that cropping looks like shortly. In addition to that, you're looking at about 90 minutes battery life. It says up to 120. I got about 90 minutes when I was shooting around playing with this thing. On the battery life. I do really like the fact that you can plug directly into the camera to charge the battery. So there's no external battery charger thing that you need to carry around. You can just plug this straight in through the USB port and it will charge, which is cool. You can also plug this straight from the USB, which comes through a very easy to access port over here, and put that straight into your computer and stream. So it can double as a webcam with a kick-ass 4K resolution and interchangeable lens, which is possibly beneficial to many of you vloggers out there. So those are kind of the key features. You can obviously switch it out for any of the E-mount lenses, although it's worth pointing out that the power zoom function is not available on the majority of the E-mount lenses I've come across. So therefore you do lose the ability to do the kind of easy zoom like this. You've got to go for the manual zoom. And I find the manual zoom is a bit of a pain in the butt when you don't have a viewfinder. But again, this is kind of starting to go within the scope of what this camera is trying to be, because it's a vlogging camera, so you set it up like it is here and go about your business, less so than you're out there going crazy with your zooms and the big ass telephoto lenses. There's a various bunch of modes in there that you might expect, like product showcase, soft skin, background blur, the eye tracking, Sony's eye tracking, all of that stuff works as you would expect. It's all pretty easy to access through the dials on the back and also some buttons on the top. What you don't get on this that you do get on something like the M50 is the inbuilt digital filters. As mentioned, there's no ND filter on this, but also just filters like fisheye or black and white, or there's a lot of different types of filters like that that you get on cameras that are not just focused on video, but also have a focus on being still content creators. And as I mentioned in my verdict for this camera, I do feel there's a bit of a miss there. I think they could have possibly tried to be a bit more than just a vlogging camera here. But you know, what is in here does work well, and it's pretty feature rich in that regard. And like I said, jump onto the Finder website and check out all of the features I have on there. So let's take a closer look at the design of the Sony ZV-E10. Now it's got quite a small form factor, as you can see. It weighs 343 grams, although that would be without the lens. I've got the kit lens here, which is a 16 to 50 mil, and it has got, as you can see here, the power zoom on it, which ties into the zoom here as well. Now, I've got about 6 lenses at the moment here that I came in for testing with this, and this is the only one that actually works with the built-in zoom, so that's something to consider. And that's also the case with the shooting grip as well, should you have that accessory. Now, the camera itself has quite a dense metallic feel to it. It actually reminds me of the old cameras from way back decades ago in the way that it feels, and I mean that in the best possible way. Now, the vari-angle screen works quite well. It sticks in position nicely, so it's very easy to maneuver, but it's also not loose, so it's not going to move around when you're bumping it, as you can see there. So pretty happy with the design of the screen. Obviously, it's really good that it works with the accessories. This actually comes with the camera, which is a windshield that just slicks into the multi-interface shoe here, which can also accept better microphones and other accessories should you want to. Although it's worth noting that on the shooting grip, it actually does feel a little bit awkward because it's quite a heavy thing to have on the end of a little stick like this. But I'll do a review of this on its own, which you can also see on the channel. Now, just looking into some of the design quirks, which I'm not overly excited about. As you can see here, this is the standard windshield on top. The on-off switch is actually kind of underneath the fuzz, which is just a little cumbersome and annoying to get to. And you can also see here, this is how you switch between the still, video and slow-mo modes. And it's not a dial, it's not a toggle like this, it's just a button. So you got to press and then press and then press. And I feel like that's a unintuitive design choice really, and very old school. And it ties into what I've said elsewhere in the video about issues that this camera has with just being an older interface. You also got the 2 shooting buttons here, which is interesting. So you've got, this is the button for shooting stills, and this is the button for shooting videos. Now, if you're on the still setting and you want to jump straight to a video, you can just press this and it'll just go straight to video mode, but it doesn't work vice versa. So if you're in the video mode and you want to take a still, you can't just jump the other way. And this is also a bit confusing in my opinion. And when you're just grabbing it, or if you're giving it to someone else to use quickly, just pressing the button or the wrong button is something I did a little too often. However, quick access to things like the background blur, which is here, is quite beneficial. The features on the back here are all a bit more standard, a bit easier to use. But as I mentioned elsewhere in the video, the actual touch screen is very minimal in its use. There's only a few things you can do on it. And another little design quirk I do want to bring up is the way that they've handled the card. So you got the card goes in here, and it's actually really hard to get your fingers in there with the lid here. So I understand it's a compact camera, and they've had to make some design choices to make it work. But there are just a few bits and pieces in here that I really feel like they could be refined in future editions. Okay, so decided to take the camera out on the road just to give you an idea of how it performs. So I'm walking through just a little bushwalk near my house. So we've got some beautiful spring sunlight coming through the trees, and lots of the trees above us. So a lot of light playing across the screen. It's set onto Intelligent Auto, which I think is perfectly fine for most people who are going to buy this camera, beginners who are looking to step up their vlogging. Here with my little bloke, so if you hear any noises, that's what that is. So this should give you a test, also a bit of the mic and how the mic performs out in the road, although there's not too much wind here, so I might head down to the beach after this to see if I can get some better wind. Now you're probably already getting a bit of an idea here for how the image stabilization works.
I haven't been too impressed with it. I've got it set on standard image stabilization at the moment. I'm just walking normally here. I'm not sure. I mean, it's looking all right on the viewfinder, but you can turn it to active stabilization. Now, I didn't notice much difference when you switch to active. It's a bit better, but you get cropped so much that you know, you really can't use it comfortably as a selfie stick. On a selfie stick, I'm using this on the shooting grip at the moment because you're just too cropped in. You have to hold it all the way out when your arm gets too tired. Now, obviously, the benefit of the E10 is that you can use an interchangeable lens, so you can just get a wider angle lens and then use the active stabilization. But like I said, I don't think it makes that much difference anyway, so possibly not worth it. Now, with the because you have to obviously pay for an extra lens. Now, you also get the rolling shutter effect on this camera is quite bad. So if we just pause here for a second and give it a bit of a move, you might be able to see it there in action. So I've noticed it's quite bad on this camera, and I try to do a couple of things. I just kind of run beside my dog and film my dog, and it just couldn't cope with it. So if you're looking for active vlogging experience, then you know, perhaps this is not the camera for you. Alright, so I've just switched it over to active stabilization mode, so you can just see a bit how much more cropped in it is there. You can't even get my beard in, huh? So that's what you're dealing with. Obviously there's wide angle lenses that solve that problem for you, but you know, and you be the judge if you can see a better stabilization here as I'm walking along exactly the same path I was walking on before, or not. In terms of the rest of the camera experience, I do find it a bit laggy. The autofocus is pretty good, the eye tracking, all that kind of stuff is good, but I did notice a little bit of a delay on the autofocus sometimes. It just kind of takes a while to materialize on screen. And with the interface, it's just really old school. So you're talking about, you know, like just going through menu after menu, one button that does the same, that you need to toggle through to get through between stills, slow-mo, and the experience of stills and video. You got to kind of rotate through the same button one time after another, where I find, for example, the Canon dial system just far more easy to deal with. The screen is a touch screen, but geez, it's limited. Like, there's a few bits and pieces you can kind of touch to manipulate, but it's really, really, really archaic. And so the whole kind of experience there of using that stuff, and just a bit of lag when you press the button before it actually comes up on the screen and shows that you've changed the mode, I found to be quite frustrating, and I think there's just a lot of room for improvement there. So definitely one of the strengths of this camera is how easy it is to pick up for beginners. Your intelligent auto settings are actually really quite cool, and you'll notice as you're kind of going through different environments how it will switch between landscape and portrait and backlit and even macro, depending on where the camera is actually placed. So it takes a lot of those, I guess, challenges out of it if you're just getting into your photography or your videoing. Okay, so I've just moved up to the headland where there's a real stiff onshore breeze coming in, some pretty decent sized surf as well. So just wanted to get an idea here of how the mic that is included with the camera and the little windshield that comes with it behaves. So you can hear how I'm going there, and hopefully that sounds pretty good. My other tests, it really did sound quite good for an inbuilt mic. You can of course plug in an alternative mic either through the electronic shoe up the top, the multi shoe up the top, or you can also just plug in through the audio jack, something like the Wireless Go 2, which I've reviewed on Finder if you want to check it out. But you know, in general, I think that the provided mic that comes with it is actually really quite impressive.
If you focus on what the Sony ZV-E10 is designed to do, which is to be this vlogging camera that can be upscaled with new lenses and accessories through the multi-interface shoe, then it works a treat. But the problem is, and the frustration I've found with it, is that as soon as you try and step beyond that, it really starts to struggle. If you want to get active and move around while you're shooting your content, the image stabilization, the rolling shutter effect, and the general kind of slight delay you get with the autofocus and auto light is just not up to scratch, and you can't quite get the experience that you want from it. If you want to use this for creating content with stills, it does take really good stills, there's no doubt about it, but those inbuilt filters that we see on other cameras are missing, so you kind of don't quite get the full stills experience that you want there. And the interface in general I find to be quite frustratingly slow. When you're pushing the buttons, it takes a little while for that to then manifest on the screen, and the screen itself can take a little while to adjust to what the actual lens is seeing. So the lack of a viewfinder, which you get in the A6000 series, possibly plays a role there as well, and just kind of nerfing it down. So it aims to be this flexible camera, and that it has the interchangeable lens and you can add on all these accessories. However, in the same time, it kind of shoots itself in the foot. To be fair, it does price itself at the beginner's range, and it is a beginner's camera. So if you're very much focused on having this like really, really good webcam that can also double like this to shoot your content in a reasonably stable environment, or to have on the end of the stick and to walk around with and to shoot yourself in front of things or with friends, things like that, then it does kind of find its little groove. But yeah, as soon as you extend out of that, then I feel like it really starts to trip up quickly. Now, for my full review, head over to the finder.com.au website. I've also got some reviews of the Canon M50, which is a competitor to this device, on the YouTube channel and on the finder.com.au website. So check all of that out. And until next time, see you later.
Find better.